Hi everybody, it's Dr. Kathy. How are you? Good to see you tonight. All right, today I am talking about erogenous zones, okay? So erogenous zones are an area on your skin, right, that is sensitive to touch and can cause a sexual arousal, okay? So let's say that again. There are areas on your skin, right, that are really unique in that sometimes when they're touched, they can actually cause a sexual arousal. That's an erogenous zone, okay? So that sensation of touch is very, very complex. It has a pathway that it follows, and that pathway is the reason why we can actually interpret and understand what happens when someone is touched in the erogenous zones. So bear with me, I'm going to go a little technical here, but what happens is that sometimes when you're touched, a cascade of reactions occur. Now, before I talk about the cascade of reactions, I want to first of all say the sensations are divided into two types of sensations. General sensation. So the general sensation can be pain, right? Temperature, hot or cold. It can be anything like a touch. So we said pain, temperature, touch. You can get those sensations, right? Also, you can get pressure, different from touch. So when you're actually putting more pressure, you're going to elicit a different reaction from someone versus a light touch. Remember that. Take note of that. It's very important. Light touch versus deep touch. Still a sensation, but it will give you different reactions, right? Then we have proprioception and vibration. Proprioception is position, right? So it's where you actually move and you actually can actually have a feeling based on that, some sensations based on movement. And that's based on the inner ear and all the stuff that goes on in the brain. But the vibration too, you can get that sense of vibration and also have a response, again, to touch. So that is just to let you know that we have general and we have special sensations too. The special sensations are the vision, the hearing, the taste, and the smell. When you get those, it's a completely different pathway. So we're not going to talk about special senses. We're going to focus on the general sensation, which is touch, which is involved in the erogenous zones. So what happens is that when you're touched in the erogenous area, it is picked up by receptors, transferred to the nerve fibers. The nerve fibers now go to the spinal cord and send that information to the brain. The part of the brain is called the somatosensory cortex. And that's where that information, whether it's pain, whether it's pressure, whether it's vibration, that is where the brain will now process and decide and say, what am I going to do with this information? And what it does with the information is that it actually converts it into a motor activity, a motor action where you're going to have to do something, depending again on the type of touch. So if it's for arousal, which is what we're talking about, the brain is going to say, you're aroused, and it will now trigger a voluntary or involuntary, could be both. Voluntary meaning intentional, you're going to move your arm, you're going to actually move your leg because of that touch. That's the voluntary. But involuntary motor activity occurs also, which is what will be internal, and usually we talk about the groin, the pelvic floor, the muscular contractions that we can't control. We just start feeling things in that particular area, the groin, right, where you are not in control of it. So that sensation can start a voluntary, which is actual movement, right, that you're going to be touching and moving more and saying, yes, you want some more, and an involuntary action that will not be in control. We want both. We want them all. So the key, though, is you want to understand that that is what is happening when the brain now gets that information. It's going to send it back to your muscles and to your body through, again, the spinal cord, through the large nerve fibers, and it's going to make you do something. And also, you're going to enjoy that feeling because there's going to be that involuntary that you can't control, which is part of the orgasm, right? So that is the process by which touch occurs. And that's a complicated process. And I wanted to point out a few things that you might want to know also. So the erogenous zone is actually a map, right? So it's a map that follows a certain pathway and will elicit a certain response depending on the type of touch. In this case, sexual, sensual arousal. That's what we want. So the touch that you do in the bedroom, the foreplay, is critical and crucial for your partner, both men and women. So that area is called the erogenous zone map. So that area is where you're going to find that everyone differs and everyone has their own sensation and nerve endings and responses. So you got to be very particular. And you want to ask, fine, you can ask. But what you might want to do is you might just want to test it out and ask, do you like that? You like this? Very important to communicate in the bedroom while going on. Why? Because while you're having sexual activity, that is when the erogenous zones actually expand. So when you're walking down the street, if you're at work and someone touches the back of your leg, you're not going to get aroused because it's so not in the moment, right? You're not in the heaves, or you're not in the feelings, you're not in the zone of love and sex. So it's not really capturing the actual sense of that cascade reaction that goes to the brain. It's just not going that way. It's going a different pathway, right? Very complex, very, all these studies. If you need the studies, let me know. I can send you where the studies, send you to where the studies are. But you really need to be able to understand that when you're not in a sexual relationship or engaged in sex, you're not going to get the same response in the same erogenous zones. And you're going to wonder, what happened to my erogenous zone? And some people, again, are not even in touch with the erogenous zones. So you have to find your erogenous zones. You've got to sort of say, okay, I want to know what my erogenous zones are, but that would be more in the heat of sex, not just sit down here and touch, okay? So that's some information I want you to know. The other information I want you to know is that when it expands, when you're in the activity, sexual activity, and you expand that sense of sensation, getting more exciting and more pleasurable, it's actually expanding because you are trying to, they say, pair bond. And pair bonding is where you want to actually procreate. So it's something evolutionary, it's something that's in our DNA that we have. So you just be aware that it can, again, expand because it wants you to go ahead and procreate. So if you need to use birth control, use birth control, right? Condom. Remember, this is about having safe sex, consenting adults, using protection, please. And if you don't want to get pregnant, please, you know how to not get pregnant. If you don't know, find a doctor, primary care doctor like me, that will talk to you about that in more details, okay? So that's important to know that pair bonding is because you really want to procreate. It's a very strong urge. Primitive, but it's there. Of course, we've now got ways of not making sure that we don't procreate. So we won't talk about that today. So the other point I want you to know about erogenous zones is that in men, okay, so in men there's something unique. When you touch very lightly the genitals of a man, you're going to get a completely different response in the brain from if you put pressure on it. So they love to have that contrast of light touch and deep touch because you have two different reactions. Now this isn't men, okay? So you guys are lucky. You actually have a great sexual or sensual response when you are lightly touched on the penis, the genital area, versus deep touch. So they're both pleasurable, but you get that extra kick of having two lovely pleasures just from one method of sensation, which is touch, right? We're not talking about any other sensation except touch. So deep pressure versus light pressure is different for women, right? We don't get that. So you guys are lucky. Just wanted to take note, women take note, light touch, deep touch. Play with it. They love it, okay? That's just a note I wanted you to have. Then for women, we've got one, that you got to know, guys. So guys got to tune in on this too. The nipples. Now, I do know there are some women that do not have sensation around the nipples, okay? There is a way to get sensation, so come see me or see a doctor like me. Again, we're holistic. We do a lot of hormone balancing, and there are ways that we can help you get sensation if you're not having sensation in your nipples. Now, it's complicated, but it's straightforward, and just try and get some sensation because it's beautiful. But if you don't want it, you don't have to have it, right? I'm just saying if you want it. So when the nipples are touched, they say, research says, that a woman's nipples goes straight to the brain as if the genitals of the woman have been touched. So the clitoris, right? It's almost the same sensation in the brain. So why women love their nipples being touched is because you get very close, if not exactly the same sensation as if your clitoris, your vagina, your vulva was stimulated. So take note, guys. The nipples is a great area to give excessive, extreme pleasure to women that respond. And of course, if they don't, that's okay. If it doesn't bother you, you're okay. But if you want some help, come and see a doctor like me. Okay? So that is very important to know. There's just extra stuff that you might not know. The final thing I want to say is that there is some research going on to find out how and why this experience sometimes can really expand in terms of some people they just go wild in the erogenous zones, okay? So they say that there are some extra sensory networks involved. Just take a note, it's still early on that, but when you do get aroused and you do get that orgasm, that's what is all involved, the extrasensory networks, plus of course the brain, and of course the other senses too, which I'm not talking about. The most important thing for you to know is that touch is very important in the sexual activity, in foreplay too, but the sexual activity, being able to control the pressure, being able to control the areas where you touch is crucial. All right, now, erogenous zones. There are so many, and I just want to name a few. I hope I don't forget some, but let's start with the woman, okay? So again, they're going to be similar, and so I would love to do them at the same time, but I'm going to do women first, right? So we know that the scalp, sometimes if you take your hand and you just massage the scalp, right, that can be an erogenous zone for women, right? The nose, right? The lobes of the ears, the neck. We know the neck is amazing, right? The shoulders, all right? The armpits, for some people, the armpit is an erogenous zone. We just said the nipples, the breasts, right? The back, right? The low back, the upper back, again, rubbing, touching, again, lightly for women, right? That deep thing doesn't work for women as well as for men, right? So remember that. So it's really a light touch, and you got to get to that touch, men. You got to know how to touch, okay? Then you come down, right? The stomach, especially the lower stomach, and the navel is very, very sensitive. It can be a nice erogenous zone. The side of the stomach can also be, okay? The pubic mons, the area down here where you have the little bulge there that people, sometimes it's too big and they complain about it. But for me, it's very sensitive because it's a fat pad and it's protective. So very nice area for touching, for erogenous zones. Then of course we have the vagina and the clitoris and the whole genital system. But I want to take note here and talk about the V-spot. Okay, so yes, there is a V-spot, and that V-spot is actually the entrance to the vagina. I want to just put this big exclamation mark there. Y'all have got to try the vagina opening. It is beautiful for women, okay? Now, yeah, you got to get in there by going past that V-spot. But what I'm saying is sometimes you can hang there and you can play with that area, and that for some women, I'm sure it's going to be for a lot of women, can be a great additional erogenous new zone, right? So they call it the V-spot. So I want you to go try that tonight when you go home, okay? So that V-spot, I wanted to emphasize that, okay? So I'm going to go further. The buttocks, right? The crease of the buttocks, right? The back of the knee, the inside of the ankles, the toes, the fingers, the palm, right? Some people are feet people, so the soles of the feet, those are areas that can be erogenous zones. And again, touching, and I'm going to actually show you some stuff that you can use to touch to magnify the experience, can be really unique on those particular areas that I'm naming. Now, men, okay, same areas, but I'm going to say for guys, gosh, the genitals, of course, like I said before, the penis, the inside of the thighs for some men, and for women, we love the inside of the thighs. Then what else for men? I'm thinking again, the scalp, the neck, the nipples. For some guys, they're not really into it, and some guys they are. So you got to find out by asking. What else for guys? I'm sure the buttocks is that there for guys, and I think it's mainly the penis. So the main hotspots or the main erogenous zones are the three, right? So I'm naming extra erogenous zones, but the main one is the penis, the clitoris for women, the perineum, and the anus, okay? So I hope I didn't miss the anus. The anus has so many nerve endings, and it is a joy. And I'm going to say this here right now. You are not gay if you enjoy anal stimulation. What makes you gay is if you are attracted to the same sex. That means your loins light up. You get that hot feeling when you see the same sex. That means that you love the same people like yourself, and that's okay. It is normal. It is very well found in the animal kingdom, so it's going to be found in our human kingdom. So very important for you to know that you are not gay, and I'm going to say it again, you are not gay if you enjoy anal stimulation. That is something that is just pleasurable beyond control for some people, and that depends again on the nerve endings, okay? All right, so that's just a few erogenous zones. I hope I didn't forget any. Oh, the Achilles tendon. For some people, the Achilles tendon, they like the Achilles tendon, which is, again, an individual source of pleasure. All right, so this is a feather. So those erogenous zones, those areas that I just mentioned, use this, right? And you can use that to awaken the erogenous zones. And again, these are toys that you can use if your partner agrees, get their consent, okay? And you can do this, you know, and play a game, right, in the bedroom. So this is something you can actually blindfold your partner, okay? Blindfold and touch the erogenous zones that are outside, right? Yeah, he could be naked sitting in a chair. Put him in a chair and blindfold him. If you want to be a little bit risque, you can tie their arms behind lightly, loosely, with their consent, and give them some added mystery to this, right? Now, this is another rope you can use, but this is like softer, more gentle on the wrists, okay? So if they don't like the blindfold, don't use a blindfold. I prefer the blindfold because I don't want them to see what's going to happen. And they say they won't see or they won't look, but I think this is a guaranteed way. But no, if they don't like it, don't use it, okay? I have another toy here, this little light whip. Again, it's not very painful. It doesn't hurt at all. I'm not into pain. Some people are. So again, with consent, talk to your partner, not without having a safe word. Please have a safe word. Even for the stuff that we're talking about right now, have a safe word, any safe word, and just make sure that your partner is agreeing to what you're doing. So this is a little whip that has several tassels to it. Again, very light. And you can play with the erogenous zones using some of these toys. And my last most favorite toy, which looks a little bit wicked, is the Wharton's wheel. Can you see that? Okay, the Wharton's wheel has some spikes on it, and they turn, and you can actually put them on the skin very gently, not breaking any skin at all, okay? And you could rub that on certain areas of the body, not every area of the body, please, just general areas, nothing that is very sensitive, but it's a unique sensation that you can use on the small of the back, on the, the knee, the inner knee, the behind the knee, and even on the feet if you like the feet. Now, I am just here to talk about erogenous zones and just give you a little bit more information that you could take home and try. And I hope that you enjoyed that, and maybe you'll enjoy doing it at home with your partner with permission, okay? All right, guys, have a good night. See you next time. Bye.